There is a word. God always has a word. We're going to be reading today out of the book of 1 Kings. 1 Kings chapter number 1, beginning at verse number 51 through verse 53. 1 Kings 1, 51 through 53 is our printed text. And I'm trusting that you would be receptive of what the Lord will say unto us today as we go to this Old Testament passage and see how this man in the times of the kings, when David is about to die, this particular rivalry, it is a battle that will take place between Adonijah and Solomon as they both seek to become the king of Israel. And again, we'll start reading at verse number 51. Would you stand for the reading today? And it was told Solomon, saying, Indeed, Adonijah is afraid of King Solomon. For look, he has taken hold of the horns of the altar, saying, Let King Solomon swear to me today that he will not put his servant to death with the sword. Then Solomon said, If he proves himself a worthy man, not one hair of him shall fall to the earth. But if wickedness is found in him, he shall die. So King Solomon sent them to bring him down from the altar. And he came and fell down before King Solomon. And Solomon said to him, Go to your house. We want to preach this morning from this particular subject. Grab the horns of the altar and hold on. That's what I want to preach today. Grab the horns of the altar and hold on. This particular month is our month of emphasizing prayer, faith, and fasting. Prayer, faith, and fasting is our emphasis. That's the pillar that we are focusing on throughout the month of July. How the church of today must strengthen the pillar of prayer, faith, and fasting. Last Sunday we talked about and we took a different look at what faith is. We looked at faith more from a noun standpoint than from a verb standpoint. We know that our English translations always translate faith into a verb. But faith in the Bible is a noun. That is not to say that to utilize faith or to practice faith in a verb sense is wrong, because we have to practice faith. We have to do faith. But at the same time, the Bible, when it uses that word faith, is talking about, or when we use the word and translate it from the Bible into the faith of the verb, is talking about more of believing or trusting than it is faith as the noun that the Bible refers to. This particular passage that we are going to approach today is one that will really show us some things as relates to prayer and faith. Even as we read this particular passage, you may not see the prayer and the faith in it as of yet, but as we plow our way through this, you will see how prayer and faith are so important in the life, not just of Solomon, but of Adonijah. Now, theologians say that Adonijah is something very, very important that you have to recognize at the onset of the message. Adonijah was the eldest living son of David. He was David's oldest living son. Amnon and Absalom are both dead. Another son, Chileab, is presumed to be dead. The two living sons are Adonijah and Solomon. David is nearing death, and he has two sons, Adonijah and Solomon. David is about to die. He is the king of Israel. And since he is about to die, he has to name an heir to the throne. We know that by reading this particular chapter, chapter 1, if you go back up to verse 1, it tells us that David by this time was old and advanced in years. David is old, advanced in years, and he is approaching death. They try to test David to see if he is really going to die. They take a virgin girl named Abishag, and they put Abishag in David's bed so that Abishag could warm David's body. And we know how David was. David was the kind of man that if he got anywhere near a woman, then that was going to be trouble for the woman. So when they put Abishag in David's bed and he did not respond to her, they said he's almost dead. They knew at this point that David, who had laid with Bathsheba and had children through other women, they knew that something was wrong with David and that he had little life left, because now he has this young virgin, and the Bible even calls her a beautiful virgin girl, in the bed with David. And he had no response. No response at all. And they say he's dead. Now, once they know that David is almost dead, Adonijah and Solomon smell this stench of death on their father. So they make their pitch for the throne. Adonijah is the eldest son. Solomon is younger than Adonijah. But they both want to be the king. In verse 5 of the text that we read, Adonijah boldly says, "I will be king." He rounds up his campaign committee, and they began to seek his exaltation to the throne. He even holds a banquet. And at this banquet, he invites his supporters and potential supporters to attend the banquet. While he's campaigning on a platform as the rightful heir, there is another group campaigning on behalf of Solomon. Solomon has his group. Adonijah has his group. They both want to be the next king. Nathan, who had originally gone to David when he slept with Bathsheba and prophesied to him and rebuked him, now Nathan in the text has gone to Bathsheba and coerced and planned to have a meeting with David. They go into David's bedroom and convince David to make Solomon the king. Adonijah is the eldest. Nathan and Bathsheba have convinced David to make Solomon the king and not Adonijah. They paint Adonijah as the bad guy, and they encourage David to make Solomon the next king. David listens to Bathsheba and to Nathan, and he announces that Solomon shall be the next king. I've got to tell you the story, because if you don't know the story, you're going to miss what's happening in the text. So, as they move now to consecrate Solomon as the next king, they do it without delay. In fact, Adonijah is still at his banquet. Bathsheba and Nathan have already convinced David to make Solomon the king. And if you read in verse 38 through 40, Nathan and Bathsheba have gone to Zadok the priest, and summoned him to hold a consecration service for Solomon. Pour oil on his head and announce him to be the king of Israel. So Zadok, he takes the oil, pours it over Solomon's head. They have this massive parade. They blow the shofar, and they announce that David has now proclaimed Solomon the king of Israel. And they shout, "Long live King Solomon." And Adonijah is at his banquet, his campaign banquet. He hears the noise of the parade, announcing that the next king is Solomon. He knows what has happened. He knows that somebody has gone in and coerced David to make Solomon the king. And as he listens, he gets nervous, because he knows that tradition of that day is whoever becomes king has to kill anybody who opposed him. Anybody who wanted to be king, any other heir to the throne, would have to be killed so that they would not cause any problem with the next king. Adonijah knows Solomon is going to kill me. Since he's the next king, he's going to kill me. That brings us to the text. Because now Adonijah, according to the text, the verses that we read, it says that now Adonijah was afraid of Solomon. So he arose and went and took hold of the horns of the altar. Now, you got to understand what that means. The horns of the altar were 4 corner pieces on the altar of burnt offering. They were staves that stuck out. And on those corners, those 4 corners, they would tie animals to the 4 corners of the altar. Whenever they brought them in to be sacrificed, they'd tie the animal to the corners of the altar and keep them there until the time of the sacrifice. But that was not the only reason why they had these 4 corners on the altar. An additional use of these horns on the altar was for prayer and refuge. When someone was in trouble, they would run to the tabernacle and grab the horns of the altar as a plea for mercy upon their lives. And whenever anybody was seen grabbing the altar, the horns of the altar, they were subject to getting mercy. So here Adonijah is. I feel like I'm going to preach whether y'all want me to or not. Here Adonijah is. Made his way down to the tabernacle. His life is at jeopardy. He's in a tough place in his life. But he makes his way down to the tabernacle. Grabs the horns of the altar. And he holds on. And refuses to let go. Now, when a person was seen clenching to the horns of the altar, those who saw him knew that he was in the posture of pleading for mercy. Back in the days of when Pentecostals didn't mind being Pentecostals, they had this phrase: grab the horns of the altar and don't let go till you get a breakthrough. See, I grew up Baptist and Pentecostal. I grew up Baptist-costal. And when I got bored with the Baptist church, I'd go down to the Pentecostal church and get fired up again. When I go to the Baptist church and they sit there and look like they had been sucking on lemons, I'd go down to the Pentecostal church and they dance and shout and speak in tongues. I went to the Baptist church on Sunday morning, went to the Pentecostal church on Sunday night. So I got a little mixture of all of it. But I know what it means to stay in church for hours and hours and hours, pleading unto God. And they called it grabbing the horns of the altar. We ain't got time to stay in church for no longer than 90 minutes now. But what if God don't deliver you until 120 minutes? What are you going to do? You going to let go of the horns? They knew what it means to grab hold of the horns of the altar. And they said, stay there till you get a breakthrough. And if you let go and they say, oh, you